Hi there, I'm Sandy Allnock, and I'm going to be talking about the Exploring Watercolor bundle that's available at Ellen Hutson's store. It's a bundle she put together for my Exploring Watercolor class, but it's good for all different kinds of things. If you don't want to learn how to paint fruit, you can still use that number 12 and number 8 brush. Those are the silver brushes that I love so much, and a 1-inch wash brush. The Essential set from Daniel Smith, which has 2 yellows, 2 reds, and 2 blues. And we're going to do some experimenting today to see the difference between them, and a pad of watercolor paper. And this is one of my favorite watercolor papers. Works wonderfully. And it's a 9x12 pad. So I'm going to paint the whole sheet and get 4 backgrounds out of one of these. And if you use smaller pieces, then you can get more backgrounds out of them. But I'm going to put a little bit of color onto a palette, and I call this a palette, but it's a tile for like 85 cents from the hardware store. It's really no big deal. I like it because it's small and it's white and it fits in my craft drawer really nicely, and it washes up really well, and the colors, you can see them really easily on that white surface. And it's just a nice little thing to do some quick paintings like this. So I have put them in order of warm and cool. So on the right-hand side are the cool colors, on the left-hand side are the warm colors. And I'm going to start with doing this experiment with the cool colors. This is something that I learned from a watercolor teacher. So this is not just me being a 5th grader and throwing paint on a piece of paper. I did not know that this was something other artists like to do. I mean, I like to just play with the paint and see what happens. And in the class that I took from Jean Haynes, H-A-I-N-E-S, she had us just make a bunch of washes first. And we were challenged to make interesting washes that had interesting textures and let the colors drip and see how much paint and water it takes to get them to drip. I had a little challenge here trying to get that to go, and eventually decided I wasn't really thrilled with that whole idea, so I just started moving it with my brush. You can play with these colors in all different kinds of ways. And you can wet the paper first, you can not wet the paper first. There's just innumerable things that you can try when you're just loose with a piece of paper. And don't worry, it's just a piece of paper, especially if you're making backgrounds, because backgrounds are pretty forgiving. You can make pretty much anything, and it's going to be gorgeous because it's beautiful watercolor, and you're just going to let it mix in different ways. I'm splashing watercolor on, or splashing water on first, and then splashing watercolor on by just flicking the brush and mixing the different colors and trying to see what kind of purple can I get if I use more of the blue or less of the blue. Do I need more pink color? Do I like all those white spots? Not so much, so I'm going to cover those up. There's innumerable things you can do. You can throw salt on it, you can throw plastic on it. A lot of different ways to get texture, but I'm going to try for just letting the paint do all the texture on its own. And the instructor had said just practice with different brush strokes and see what happens when you just slap the brush onto the paper. What happens when you tap it in a series of brush marks and just hit the paper and let paint bounce around. Just let yourself be that little kid again and just let the paint move. And then pick it up, let it move around. I like to just move it around manually and decide which direction I want it on. Some people, including Jean Haynes, she just says you need to have the paper tilted up, but I like to just tilt it different directions and move that paint around as I want to. I'm going to do another one while that one is drying with the warm colors, and just see what happens with the warm colors and what can I learn from them. That's the idea behind this, is what can you learn about the pigments in order to use them for something else. Like if you're going to do a painting and you want to know how to mix a certain kind of color, this is a great way to experiment with it. And one of the things that I discovered in this was if you take the French ultramarine blue and mix that with the Pyrrole red, you end up with a really dark brown color. I think it has a little bit of yellow in it too, but I think that red has a little bit of a yellow cast in it as well. But watch how some of that is going to make a dark color. You can see some of it forming at the bottom of that red area. And that's something that I'll keep in mind, and I'm going to use it in a little bit so that I can create some darks in a painting. But here, I'm just playing around with it. I'm just experimenting. I'm seeing what happens when I drop blue into red. What happens when I drop red into blue? What's the difference between them? Does one do it better than the other? How much pigment do I need versus how much water? And when you're just making washes like this, just crazy washes with textures and colors all over the place, it's just a way to play and just be free and not think too much about exactly doing something right. I mean, there's no right or wrong in this. Just have fun. So I'm tilting the paper to move it around. And there was something that I started noticing, which is I have these red blobs in there, which are little blobs of actual pigment that did not get kind of melted down into watercolor. So move my brush around, and then I had all that extra color on there that turned into brown. Note that blue, yellow, and red together, if they're all together, tend to make a brownish color. But look at the darkness that I'm now getting where the red and the blue are mixing together. It's turning into a brown, but I'm getting a good dark. So now I know if I'm going to use this set of 6 colors and I need a dark color, I can get that by mixing the Pyrrole and the French Ultramarine. So I'm moving it around again, and that area in there just seems like it's got hard edges. Didn't like that so much. So I'm just going to throw in some more pigment. It looked like the blue had dried before the red went down, so the red got some hard edges on it. So just throw some more on there. And then I'm going to let them both air dry completely, because I like the look of what happens after they air dry. We'll take a look at it in a little bit and see what happened to them while they sat there and I did this other painting. Because I wanted to use up all this extra paint now that's on my palette, and I thought I'd show you that just because you have the basics, the red, the blue, and the yellow, which might seem like very childish types of colors, you can do amazing things with them. And I'm not mixing a brown to do this dog. Note that I'm just putting colors on directly onto the paper and letting them mix on there. And I'm not aiming to do a brown dog. If I were, I could certainly just keep dropping colors into these areas to make it a brown dog, but I didn't want to do that. You could also mix the colors on the palette to make a brown for the dog. You could mix a really dark color to make the eyes and the nose really dark, but I'm just going to do it with a couple layers of color and just start building things up little by little. And this little dog, by the way, his name is Jasper. He's the office dog at Ellen Hudson, and he's a sweet little dog. He's very old, but he is so sweet. He's such a doll. He loves when people come to pick up their orders because he loves having all the girls fawn all over him, and he's just a really good little office doggy. So keep him in your thoughts and prayers because he's getting older, and I thought it would be fun to do a painting of him just to demonstrate that you can do all kinds of great things with this set of really simple colors and these brushes. One of the things that I'm moving fast enough you can't see is the large areas I'm using the number 12 brush, and then the smaller detailed areas I switched to using the number 8. So I am using all the stuff that's in this bundle, and that's why I like to have 2 different sizes brushes, because then I'm able to get both detail and larger areas. And look how cute that's going to be all framed up. Hopefully by the time this video goes live, I will have already given this to Ellen. So here are the 2 dry pieces. They took quite a while because I had a lot of pigment and a lot of water on there. But look at the difference. There's a lot of warmth on that one on the left. There's cooler colors on the right. The intensity of colors is different in both. I love that quinacridone rose that's on the bottom right-hand side of that right-hand piece. There's just lots of little different areas that I love. And I'm going to cut out rectangles and make 4 cards out of each one of these. You could cut out all different kinds of shapes, die cut them out. And you do need to cut these down so that they will fit in your die machine. And if you like the piece that's in the center, note that you'll have smaller panels to work with once you cut all that paper down, so you'll have smaller edges. So I'm just going to use 4 of each one, and I'm going to stamp them with this Technic Tuesday set. I love these for Christian Christmas cards. They're beautiful sentiments. Just the things that they say, as well as the way they've set up the fonts. I'm just in love with this one. And I'm going to put them in kind of the lower quadrant rather than have them in the center, because dead center is just kind of expected. So this is the EK Success powder tool, which will destatic it for you so that your embossing powder doesn't stick all over where you don't want it. And then I'll stamp it. I do it always twice just because I don't trust myself. Stamp it in the Versamark ink, which is clear. And then when I put my embossing powder on it, my Hero Arts embossing powder, it will just stick to the sentiment itself. And then I can dust that powder off when I'm all finished. Taking a look at the cards that are finished, I've glued them onto card bases using some dimensional adhesive. And the first 4 are using the warm colors, and you can see how intense those get, and the interesting granulated texture that some of these colors have, especially when they're mixed together. They still carry that granulation. And the next 4 cards are from the cool background, the cool colors, and they have a thinner outline around the outside. So I was experimenting with that as well to see which one I liked better. But I think both of them are really fun, and they'd be fun to mix and match as well in future experiments. So on the top are the warm colors, and on the bottom are the cool colors, and they all use that Technique Tuesday sentiment set. So if you're interested in this little bundle, it is a steal, let me tell you. Ellen priced them specially for the class that I have over on my website, and she has not raised the price yet. So shh, don't tell her that I let you know that it's a deal. All right, links are in the description for all the products, and I will talk to you guys later. Bye-bye.